stop resisting right now. It hurts. All right, I'm done.
It was supposed to be a quiet afternoon. No sirens, no shouting, no headlines waiting to be written. 72-year-old Earl Johnson had lived in Riverside Heights for over 40 years. A retired school janitor, a widower, a man known for waving at neighbors and fixing broken fences without asking for a dime. That afternoon, Earl was doing what he did every Tuesday. Driving home from the pharmacy, the bag of medication sat neatly on the passenger seat. His seatbelt was buckled. His speed never went above 30. That's when the police lights came on. Red, blue, unforgiving. Earl sighed, not in anger, in exhaustion, because in his lifetime Earl had learned one thing very well. When you're a black man, even an old one, you never assume a stop is routine. Officer Daniel Cross had been on the force for 6 years, young, ambitious, and already carrying a reputation for being aggressive but effective. His partner, Officer Miller, stayed behind the cruiser as Cross approached Earl's car. Cross knocked on the window harder than necessary. "License and registration." Earl complied immediately. "Yes, sir," he said softly. His hands trembled, not from guilt, but from age. Cross noticed the shaking, and instead of seeing a frail old man, he saw suspicion. "Why are you shaking?" Cross asked. I'm old, officer," Earl replied, "and you startled me." Cross leaned closer. "Step out of the vehicle." Earl blinked. "Is something wrong?" "I said step out." Cars slowed. Phones came out. The street began to watch. Earl opened the door slowly. He placed one foot down, then the other. But before he could straighten up, Cross grabbed his arm. "Move faster." "I have arthritis," Earl said, wincing. "Please!" That's when Cross yanked him, hard. Earl lost his balance and fell forward, hitting the pavement with a sound that made people gasp. "Hey!" someone shouted from across the street. Officer Miller finally stepped in. "Cross, relax." But it was already too late. Earl groaned in pain. His glasses lay broken beside him. And then, Cross did something that would change everything. He dragged Earl by the arm, pulling him toward the sidewalk like he weighed nothing, like he wasn't human. "Why are you doing this?" a woman screamed. "He's an old man!" Earl tried to speak, but the air had left his lungs. "Stop resisting!" Cross shouted. "I'm not resisting!" Earl cried. "Please!" Someone yelled. "This is police brutality!" Cross snapped back. "Back up or you'll be arrested!" Earl felt fear crawl up his spine. Not fear of jail, fear of not surviving the encounter. He thought of his late wife, of his small house, of his son, Marcus Johnson. What Officer Cross didn't know, what no one on that street knew, was that Marcus Johnson wasn't just Earl's son. Marcus was a decorated tactical officer, a man who had spent 12 years in law enforcement, a man currently serving as a SWAT team leader for the same city. And at that exact moment, Marcus was inside police headquarters gearing up for a high-risk operation when his phone buzzed. Once, twice. Then a third time, a text message from an unknown number. "Sir, they're hurting your dad." Attached was a shaky video clip. Marcus pressed play, and his blood ran cold. There was Earl, on the pavement, being dragged. Humiliated, Marcus replayed the clip, again and again. He recognized the street instantly, recognized the voice crying out, his father's voice, a calm man, a proud man, reduced to begging. Marcus didn't speak. He didn't shout. He simply stood up, and every officer in the room noticed the change in his face. "What's wrong?" a lieutenant asked. Marcus looked up slowly. "That's my father." Silence swallowed the room. Earl was now sitting on the curb, handcuffed. Blood trickled from his forehead. Officer Cross paced. "He matched a description," Cross muttered. "A description of what?" Miller asked. Cross didn't answer, because there was no description, just assumption, just bias, just power. An ambulance had been called, but it hadn't arrived yet. And Earl, dazed and humiliated, whispered something barely audible. "My son works for the city." Cross laughed. "Yeah, everyone's got a cop cousin." Earl said nothing else. Because he knew. Sometimes the truth only matters when the right person walks in. By the time Marcus Johnson arrived at Riverside Heights, the street looked nothing like a routine traffic stop. 3 patrol cars blocked the road. Red and blue lights reflected off apartment windows. At least 15 bystanders stood recording, and at the center of it all, his father, handcuffed, bleeding, sitting on a curb like a criminal. Marcus parked half a block away, not because he was afraid, but because he needed a moment to separate son from officer, because once he stepped onto that street, everything would change. Marcus stepped out of his unmarked vehicle, black tactical pants, dark blue polo, radio clipped to his shoulder, and the badge, silver, heavy, clear. SWAT, Tactical Operations Unit. A woman filming whispered, "Wait! Is that a cop?" Another voice said, "That's not just a cop." Marcus walked forward calmly. No shouting, no rushing. Every step echoed. Officer Miller noticed him first. He stiffened, because he recognized the insignia, because he recognized the posture, because you don't spend years on the force without knowing who's dangerous without a weapon. Miller leaned toward Cross. "Hey, you see that?" Cross turned, and his confidence cracked. Just slightly. Marcus stopped a few feet away. His eyes went straight to Earl, then, slowly, to Officer Cross. "Who's the supervising officer on scene?" Marcus asked. His voice was steady, professional, commanding. Cross scoffed. "And you are?" Marcus reached into his pocket, pulled out his badge, held it up. "Sergeant Marcus Johnson, SWAT." The crowd reacted instantly. Gasps, whispers. A phone zoomed in. Cross's jaw tightened. "And what's your business here, Sergeant?" Marcus didn't break eye contact. "That man you have in cuffs," he pointed, "is my father." Officer Miller froze. Cross blinked. Once, twice. Then laughed nervously. "Okay, and, Marcus continued, I want to know why a 72-year-old man with no criminal record is bleeding on the sidewalk." Silence. The cameras kept rolling. Cross felt eyes everywhere. "This is an active investigation," Cross said. "You should step back." Marcus leaned in slightly. "Then explain it." Cross opened his mouth and stopped. Because for the first time since joining the force, he realized he might not control this situation. Marcus looked around. "Where are your body cams?" Miller instinctively touched his chest. "Mine's on." Marcus turned to Cross. "And yours?" Cross hesitated. "Battery died." Marcus nodded slowly. "How convenient." Cross snapped back. "Are you accusing me of something?" Marcus's voice dropped. "I'm observing." The ambulance finally arrived. Paramedics rushed to Earl. One of them whispered, "Sir, you hit your head." Earl winced. "I just wanted to go home." Marcus knelt beside him. "Dad, I'm here." Earl's eyes widened. "Marcus!" The handcuffs were still on. Marcus looked up sharply. "Remove them!" Cross crossed his arms. "He's detained." "For what charge?" Marcus asked. Cross paused. "Failure to comply." "With what lawful order?" Marcus pressed. No answer. Marcus stood up. His radio crackled. "Command wants a status update." Marcus keyed in. "This is Sergeant Johnson. I need a supervisor on scene immediately." Cross's face went pale. 10 minutes later, Lieutenant Harris arrived. Older, experienced, and very aware of politics. He surveyed the scene, the crowd, the phones, the injured elderly man, then Marcus. "Johnson," Harris said carefully. "Lieutenant?" Harris turned to Cross. "What happened?" Cross launched into his story. He matched a suspect description. Resisted. Fell. Marcus said nothing. He waited. Then Harris asked the question that mattered. "Any footage?" Miller nodded. "My body cam is running." Harris turned to Cross. "And yours?" Cross swallowed. "Technical issue." Harris closed his eyes briefly. Miller's body cam was played. Right there. On the hood of the cruiser. The crowd leaned in. The footage showed Earl complying, Earl explaining his arthritis, Cross yanking him, Earl falling, Cross dragging him, no resistance, no threat, just force. When the video ended, no one spoke. Harris exhaled slowly. "Cross, step aside." Cross exploded. "You're taking his side because of him?" He pointed at Marcus. Harris snapped back. "I'm taking the side of the evidence." Harris turned to Marcus. "Your father will be transported to the hospital." Marcus nodded. "And the cuffs?" Harris motioned. "Remove them." The metallic click echoed. The crowd erupted. Applause. Shouts. Justice, at least for the moment. Earl was helped onto the stretcher. Before the ambulance doors closed, he looked at Marcus. "Be careful," he whispered. Marcus squeezed his hand. "I will." As the ambulance pulled away, Harris turned to Cross. "Turn in your weapon." Cross stared. "You can't do this." Harris replied calmly. "I just did." Cross removed his gun, placed it on the hood. But as he walked toward the cruiser, he leaned toward Marcus and muttered, "You think this ends here?" Marcus met his gaze. "No," he said quietly. "It starts here." The video went viral overnight. By morning, it had crossed 5 million views. By noon, national outlets were calling it another disturbing example of excessive force. And by evening, the department went silent, not in shame, but in defense mode. Because when institutions feel threatened, they don't admit fault. They close ranks. Internal Affairs opened an investigation. On paper, in reality, they started calling officers one by one, not to ask what happened, but to ask what they remembered. Officer Miller was the first. He was pulled into a small room. No windows. 2 IA investigators sat across from him. "You've been a good officer," one said casually. "Good benefits, good future." Miller nodded slowly. Then came the warning. "Be careful how you describe events. Videos don't always tell the full story." Miller understood the message, and for the first time in his career, he felt afraid of his own badge. Marcus was back at headquarters when his phone rang. Unknown number. He answered. "Sergeant Johnson," the voice said. "This is Internal Affairs." Marcus closed his eyes. "We'd like to ask you a few questions." "About my father?" Marcus asked. "No," the voice replied. "About your conduct at the scene." That's when Marcus realized. This wasn't just damage control. It was retaliation. Later that day, Marcus was summoned to the chief's office. Chief Robert Callahan stood by the window, didn't turn around when Marcus entered. "You embarrassed this department," Callahan said. Marcus didn't respond. "You broke protocol," the chief continued. "You interfered with an arrest." Marcus finally spoke. "I identified myself. I followed procedure, and I stopped an unlawful detention." Callahan turned slowly. "You should have let the system handle it." Marcus held his ground. "The system failed." Callahan leaned in. "Be careful, Sergeant. Heroes don't last long here." At the hospital, Earl Johnson lay in a quiet room. Concussion, bruised ribs, a fractured wrist. Marcus sat beside him. "I'm sorry you had to see that," Earl said weakly. Marcus shook his head. "I'm sorry it happened at all." Earl stared at the ceiling. "You know, when they dragged me, I wasn't scared of dying." Marcus swallowed hard. "I was scared nothing would change." 2 days later, something alarming happened. Officer Cross's personnel file was suddenly incomplete. Complaints missing. Use of force reports gone. Early warnings erased. Marcus requested backups. Denied. Then he received an anonymous email. No name, no signature. Just a subject line, "Their cleaning house." Attached was a folder, screenshots, reports, internal memos, showing Cross had 6 prior complaints, all buried. And worse, supervisors had signed off. Marcus knew what this meant. If he stayed silent, his career would survive. If he spoke out, everything could burn. He went to his father, placed the folder on the table. "They're protecting him," Marcus said, and others. Earl read quietly, then looked up. "Son," he said gently, "I cleaned schools my whole life. Nobody remembered my name." Marcus clenched his jaw. "But if my pain can protect someone else's father." Earl placed a hand over Marcus's. Then it was worth it. 1 week later, cameras filled City Hall. Marcus stood at the podium, in uniform, but no tactical gear, just a badge. And truth. He spoke calmly, clearly. He released everything. The footage, the missing complaints, the emails. He ended with one sentence. This isn't about one bad officer. It's about a system that protects them. Silence, then chaos. The fallout was immediate. Officer Cross was fired. Supervisors were suspended. The chief resigned. Federal investigators stepped in. New policies were announced, mandatory body cams, independent review boards, elderly use of force restrictions. But Marcus paid a price. He was reassigned, passed over, labeled difficult. Weeks later, Marcus drove his father home. Same street, same sidewalk, but quieter now. Earl looked out the window. They won't forget this, he said. Marcus nodded. Neither will I. Earl smiled faintly. You wore your badge the right way. Months later, Marcus stood in front of a new class of recruits. He held up his badge. This isn't power, he said. It's responsibility. He paused. And if you ever forget that... He thought of his father. You don't deserve to wear it. An old man went out for medicine. He came home changed. But because of him, a system was forced to look in the mirror. Justice didn't arrive with sirens. It arrived with courage. And sometimes it wears a SWAT badge. Thank you for watching. Subscribe for impressive videos.